The United States possesses the most powerful aircraft carrier fleet in the world, with each carrier weighing in at over 100,000 tons and powered by nuclear reactors. A single carrier's combat capability can rival that of an entire country's navy. What's crucial is that the U.S. doesn't just have one carrier, but a total of 11, including 10 Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carriers and the newest addition, the Ford-class aircraft carrier. Now, where are these 11 aircraft carriers located, and how many can the U.S. deploy for actual combat at any given time? These 11 carriers can be divided into 3 categories based on their status. First, we have those deployed to the front lines, like the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, CVN-69, Carrier Strike Group, currently operating near the Arabian Gulf, executing escort missions in the Red Sea region. Second, some carriers undergo maintenance and training in their home ports. You can't keep an aircraft carrier deployed 365 days a year. After completing a mission, the crew gets some well-deserved time off to spend with family, followed by maintenance and basic training upon their return. Though not actively deployed, these carriers can be ready to sail at a moment's notice in case of emergencies. Third, some carriers are undergoing maintenance in shipyards. Maintenance is essential for all ships, big or small, but it's more complex for aircraft carriers. Take the Nimitz class, for example. While its design life is 50 years, its nuclear reactors need maintenance every 25 years. So, after around 20 years of service, they undergo a significant overhaul, which typically lasts about 4 years. Of course, the Ford-class carriers don't face this issue since their reactors have a lifespan of 50 years, lasting until their retirement without needing replacement. Apart from these midlife maintenance cycles, U.S. carriers undergo routine maintenance every 2 to 3 years, just like carriers from other countries. For instance, China's Shandong aircraft carrier, as the country's first domestically built carrier, is deployed long-term in Sanya but undergoes maintenance in Dalian, where it was constructed. So, you often see Shandong transiting the Taiwan Strait back to Dalian for several months, even over a year, for regular maintenance. We'll delve deeper into the comparison between the maintenance cycles of the Shandong and U.S. carriers in a future episode. Currently, the U.S. follows a 36-month deployment cycle. During these 36 months, a carrier spends about 14 months in maintenance and training, unable to deploy to the front lines. The remaining 22 months, the carrier is ready to deploy at any time, with actual deployment frequency and duration depending on circumstances. Each deployment typically lasts between 6 to 8 months. Take the USS Gerald R. Ford, CVN-78, for example. It deployed to the Middle East in April 2023 for its first long-term overseas deployment, initially planned for 6 months until October. However, due to the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th, the Ford remained in the Mediterranean, only returning to its home port of Norfolk in January this year, extending its deployment from 6 to 9 months. In summary, the U.S. currently has 11 aircraft carriers, each in one of these 3 states, deployed, undergoing maintenance and training, or in shipyards for repairs. Now, let's see what the remaining 8 carriers are up to. Currently, 5 carriers are deployed for actual combat. The USS Eisenhower is currently deployed in the Middle East, patrolling near the Arabian Gulf, safeguarding the Red Sea region's security, and conducting strikes against the Houthi rebels in Yemen and even Iran-supported militia groups, engaging in frontline combat. Additionally, the U.S. has deployed 2 carriers, the USS Carl Vinson and the USS Ross, to the east of Taiwan and conducting joint exercises with Japan's JSISE helicopter destroyer. From on-site images, we can see 2 U.S. carriers sailing alongside a Japanese helicopter destroyer, with E-2 Hawkeye early warning aircraft in front, followed by 2 F-35C fighters and 2 F/A-18 Super Hornets. The U.S. Navy's first F-35C squadron is deployed aboard the Carl Vinson, having achieved initial operational capability in 2019. This makes the USS Carl Vinson the first carrier to carry the F-35C. The reason why the United States deployed the F-35CS to the Pacific region is clear: to maintain stability and peace in the Taiwan Strait region. In fact, large-scale aircraft carrier joint exercises between the United States and Japan are common occurrences. As early as November last year, the USS Carl Vinson and USS Ronald Reagan conducted joint military exercises with Japan's JS Hyuga helicopter destroyer in the waters east of Taiwan. The frequent deployment of dual carriers by the United States and joint exercises with Japan are a clear message to the world, regardless of military conflicts occurring in the Western Hemisphere, be it in Ukraine or Israel, or even in the Red Sea region. The military deployment in the Western Hemisphere will not affect America's presence in the Asia-Pacific region. The U.S. has the capability to win two wars simultaneously. In addition to this, the USS Abraham Lincoln was observed leaving its home port in San Diego, California, at the end of January, heading to the Pacific to carry out its mission. Currently, we don't know the exact location of the Lincoln's tasking. Furthermore, the USS Ronald Reagan, assigned to the U.S. 7th Fleet, has been forward deployed to Yokosuka, Japan. So, to sum up, the United States currently has 5 aircraft carriers deployed overseas. Apart from the Eisenhower deployed in the Middle East, the remaining 4 carriers are all in the Asia-Pacific region, the Reagan in Japan, the Roosevelt and Carl Vinson conducting exercises off the east coast of Taiwan, and the Lincoln in the Eastern Pacific. In addition, 3 aircraft carriers are staying in ports and have not been deployed. Leading the pack is the USS Gerald R. Ford, which deployed to the Mediterranean in April 2023 and returned to its home port for maintenance in January this year, marking its first overseas deployment lasting 9 months. This return home is well deserved. Currently, the oldest U.S. aircraft carrier, the USS Nimitz, is docked near Naval Base Kitsap in Washington State. The Nimitz is the oldest active-duty aircraft carrier in the U.S. Navy, having been launched in 1972 and commissioned in 1975, serving for a total of 49 years, nearing its design lifespan. The Nimitz is currently waiting for the commissioning of the USS John F. Kennedy. The second Ford-class carrier, the Kennedy, was launched in 2022 and is expected to be commissioned in 2025. When the Kennedy is commissioned, it will be time for the Nimitz to retire, a transition that will occur within the next year. So, currently, the Nimitz is in a state of retirement, working for just 1 more year before retirement. Unless there are any special circumstances, we won't see the Nimitz deployed on missions. Additionally, the USS George Washington has been undergoing basic training near its home port of Norfolk, Virginia, on the U.S. East Coast. So, out of the 11 active aircraft carriers in the U.S., 3 are under maintenance, namely the USS Stanislaus, USS Truman, and 3 are training in port, namely the recently returned USS Gerald R. Ford, USS George Washington, and the aging USS Nimitz. Currently, 5 aircraft carriers are deployed overseas, including the Eisenhower in the Middle East, the Reagan in Japan, the Carl Vinson and Roosevelt conducting exercises off the east coast of Taiwan, and the Lincoln in the Eastern Pacific. We now have a clear understanding of the dynamics of these 11 U.S. aircraft carriers. It can be said that if there is any disturbance in the Taiwan Strait region, the United States can immediately deploy 3 to 5 aircraft carriers to the region. Currently, the U.S. has deployed 3 aircraft carriers in the Taiwan Strait region, with the Nimitz able to sail from Seattle immediately, and the Lincoln already in the Eastern Pacific. These 2 carriers can arrive at the Taiwan Strait within a week. The remaining 2 carriers, the Ford and George Washington, staying in port on the East Coast in Norfolk, Virginia, belonging to the Atlantic Fleet, are unlikely to be deployed to the Pacific region, mainly to prevent wars in Europe and the Middle East. So, as the generals of the United States have previously stated, the United States has the capability to win 2 wars simultaneously. This statement is not a joke. Currently, while the U.S. has not directly intervened in the Ukrainian conflict, it has provided significant military aid to Ukraine. In the Middle East, the conflict in the Gaza Strip is winding down, while the conflict between the Red Sea and the Houthi rebels is ongoing. The USS Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group is engaged in combat against the Houthi rebels and Iranian-backed militia groups. In such a scenario, the United States still has sufficient military strength to maintain peace in the Asia-Pacific region, even while dealing with conflicts in Ukraine and supporting allies in the Middle East.